That's it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to everyone for attending this virtual meeting for Planning Committee on Tuesday, 27th of April 2021. It's actually the last meeting of this municipal year. We're always the final meeting. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the Committee. Councillor Chris Francis, Vice Chair. Also present are officers, councillors who will be asked to introduce themselves in a moment. Please note that as this is a virtual meeting, a recording of the meeting will be available online following the meeting. If you've joined the call because you're a member of the public who is registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. If you're calling on a phone, you need to press *6 to unmute your device when invited to speak. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch, which will confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if you're in the middle of making a point, within a few seconds wind up and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone will be switched off. For ease, a pack has been prepared which contains the report, plans, presentation slides and any addendum for each item to ensure everyone can easily follow the agenda. This is available online. After officers have presented the report and any speakers have made their representations, I'll invite members to make comments. When speaking, please reference the paragraph and page number to enable everyone to follow you. I'll repeat the motion before the vote's taken to ensure everyone is aware of what is being voted on, and will call upon each member alphabetically to vote. If the technology fails, I'll adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this isn't possible, a new date and time will be organised. Can I ask members to confirm they can hear and speak before the meeting begins? I'll go through the list. Councillor Beaver. Councillor Beaver, I'll go back to him. Councillor Boardman. I'm not doing very well, am I?
Well, so no.
Councillor Dalton.
Correct.
Hooray.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gordon France.
Here, Chair.
Councillor G.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Councillor Gray.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hargreaves.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hilton.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Morwood.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Whittam.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor Whitaker.
Present.
Councillor Chris France.
Here, Chair.
Have I got Councillor Beaver? No. Or Councillor Boardman? No. Also, I've got our officers Adele Hayes. Adele.
Here, Chair.
Ian Crossland.
Here, Chair.
Taz Safdar, the Legal Services Team Leader.
I'm here, Chair.
And Nina Nicer, Democratic Member Services Officer.
Here, Chair.
Hi. Apologies.
We've had no apologies received,
So
Chair.
those people may appear. The minutes of the meeting Monday the 12th of April, pages 3 to 8. Can somebody move those, please?
Move them,
I'll
Chair.
move them, Chair.
Seconded.
I'll second them,
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you. That's two people moved them. Are we all in favour? I'll assume
Yes,
you are
we are.
unless you say any different. Okay. So the minutes are approved. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters on the agenda. As it's a virtual meeting, if a member has a pecuniary interest, they're asked to leave the call completely rather than just mute their microphone for the item. The member can rejoin the call following the completion of the item in question. Any declarations? No. So that's item 3, planning applications to be determined. There are 6 items for planning to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements are as follows. The officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who haven't registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings and ask that your mobile phones are switched to silent. And can you please switch your microphones off if you're not speaking, please, and your video feeds. Thank you. Item 3A, land at Barnes-Wallis Way, Bookshop Village, pages 9 to 38. Ian's going to present this item. There's an update on your agenda, but the officer recommendation remains the same, to approve the application subject to conditions. I have two registered speakers, an objector, Julie Wild, and the agent, Paul Kelly Rover. Julie, Paul, can you hear and speak?
Yes, I can confirm I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Ian, can you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of a building comprising a children's nursery with associated car parking and landscaping. Members will recall that this application was presented to committee on the 2nd of February, where a decision was deferred in order to allow time for officers to request that the applicant commissions a site-specific air quality assessment to investigate air quality at the site in relation to the potential impact on children attending a nursery at the proposed location adjacent to the KFC drive-through. The application site is a vacant plot of land located on Bookshop Village within a central area close to a range of amenities and is an allocated employment site in the Chorley local plan. The proposal would occupy part of the employment allocation. However, the impact on employment land supply within the borough will be limited, with a significant supply of land remaining to meet the identified demand. The site has been vacant for a substantial length of time, and the applicant has also provided a marketing report that demonstrates that the site has been marketed for employment use since May 2018 and that no offers for such use were received. Overall, it's considered that the development of part of the employment allocation for a children's nursery would not prejudice the overall aims of the development plan and the ability to supply the employment land necessary to satisfy the identified need within the borough. The proposed building would be a modern and intrusive building, whilst the siting will be compatible with its surroundings. The transport assessment and associated documents submitted in support of the application have been analysed by Lancashire County Council Highways, who consider that the proposed development will not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. Going back to the site-specific air quality assessment that was carried out, a real-time air quality assessment was carried out over a 4-week period and a report was submitted by the applicant. The assessment involved the placement of a sensor on the boundary of the site adjacent to the KFC drive-through. This enabled the monitoring of outdoor air quality that could offer real-time localised air quality information and allow that to be analysed thereafter in the report. The report that confirms that the levels of each key pollutant, which are nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, are significantly below the national objective values. The report subsequently concludes that there will be no adverse impact on the future users of the application site from air quality in the vicinity of the KFC. The method and data used have been verified by the council's environmental health officer, who maintains the view that there will be no exceedances of air quality objectives at the proposed nursery site from traffic accessing the KFC or from road traffic. All issues are covered in detail within the committee report and on the addendum. Overall, the application is considered to be acceptable in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Julie, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank
Taz,
you.
can you start the timer?
Thank you. My name is Julie Wild. I'm the operations manager for Bookshop Village Nursery, which is based on Bookshop Village. I would ask the committee please to consider whether the air pollution limits in the report are in line with or exceed World Health Organization guidelines, particularly from the standing traffic visiting Kentucky Fried Chicken that is typically in evidence. As we can see from the sample selection of images that were provided as an addendum, this occurs frequently at periods such as around the middle of the day when the nursery children are accessing the outdoor play area, and more often at the peak times between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, when again children will potentially be being collected or outdoors. Restrictions on children accessing the outdoor areas is seen as a massive detriment by Ofsted to children's health and well-being should they not be freely allowed access to outdoor in all weathers. Not only are the fumes from the cars an issue, but the access to the nursery car park is virtually inaccessible at the above peak times. I think you can see that again from the images that we've sent as the addendum. As you can see in the images at these times, the traffic queues not only onto Barnes Wallis Way, but also out onto Ordnance Way, and most evenings when the parents will be required to sit in this queue to actually access the car park to collect their children, adding massively to the queuing traffic problem with the addition of 80+ cars that will be collecting around this time. And alongside this, the associated air pollution of the standing traffic. This is without the addition of vehicles accessing the Warhorse pub. Typically, experts refer to the air pollution being associated with premature deaths because they can't be sure any one individual's death was or wasn't caused or partly caused by dirty air. I think we all remember from a previous committee meeting the case of Eliedu Kissy Deborah. Her death was contributed to by air pollution. To reiterate the point also of the addition of another children's nursery within the vicinity of Bookshop Village, along with the soon-to-be open Strawberry Fields nursery, I would ask, is this entirely necessary, especially in light of the most recent Lancashire Childcare Sufficiency Audit, which indicates that nurses in the area are running at approximately 72% occupancy, which, if allowed to continue, can only lead to closures and redundancies in the area. To conclude, I do believe it's partly the responsibility of the committee to safeguard the health and well-being of the children of the proposed nursery from the air pollution and the traffic point of view from the standing traffic associated adjacent to the children's play area. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Have I got Paul? Are you
have
ready to
indeed.
speak, please?
Thank
Taz,
you
can
very
you
much.
start the timer again?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, members. As you'll be aware, this is our third time back at the Planning Committee after having 2 previous deferrals. We fully understand why the Council has been concerned about air quality. As our provider looks after young people, we have to make sure that the air quality provision that we have both for the staff and also for the users of the facility meets government standards and in actual fact exceeds them. And on that basis, we had our previous, when we came back to Planning Committee the second time, the question was raised whether or not the survey data under which we had undertaken was sufficient on which you could base a decision. So we took on board your comments. We were using data that had been based on the transport assessment, which had been signed off for both our scheme and also for the KFC scheme next door. But the question that was raised was whether or not our location for the sampling data was of too great a distance from this site to actually be meaningful upon which you could base a decision. So in response to the last committee and the reasons for deferral, we came back and liaised with our case officer and environmental health to agree a location and a method for undertaking sampling on the site in the location, which would be where the children would be playing and in close as proximity as possible to where the cars currently queue for the KFC. At the last committee, it was suggested we did 2 weeks of data. We thought it was actually more appropriate to do at least a month's worth of data, which is what we've undertaken. That data has shown that the air pollution levels are well below the standards, and therefore we've concluded that it's an acceptable use. Now, you'll have to also appreciate the use of the KFC, as mentioned right then. We're during a COVID period where there's an increased amount of cars using that area than would normally be anticipated, and yet we've still proven that we are below the thresholds, significantly below those thresholds. As I've outlined before, this is an opportunity to create in excess of 33 jobs. This is a commercial decision by an operator who works and operates elsewhere in the Northwest, and they believe that there is sufficient demand to deliver this facility. And in terms of the transport questions that have been raised, these have been addressed in terms of the transport assessment previously and have been agreed by the transport officers and by county, but it's not an issue. So on that basis, I hope we can reach a decision today so we can move forward and create the opportunities and create the jobs. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. Now over to you, members. I've got Councillor Hilton has indicated he wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is an example of how the developers work with the committee to commission this study, and I really welcome them in doing what they've actually done, especially considering it was done for 4 weeks. Looking at, sorry, apologies for that. Looking at the data from the report, I only have a copy of the full report about an hour ago, but looking at the data, it does seem to be actually below the limits set by the World Health Organization for nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter 10, which are actually more stringent than British guidelines. That's come up in the press recently with the Ella Deborah case. So I do welcome that. My only concern with this report really is it doesn't seem to have looked at ozone, sulfur dioxide, but more importantly, the particulate matter 2.5, which are actually the ones that are a little bit more concerning. I can only see data for nitrogen dioxide and PM10, so I do still have some concerns about the others. But in terms of actually commissioning the report, thank you for the applicant for doing that. If this were to go ahead, I was just wondering whether the applicant, as a gesture of goodwill, would consider putting even additional, I know we can't put it as a planning condition, but additional measures in place, such as living walls, just to try and reduce that pollution a little bit further. I'd really welcome it if they do that. I'm still undecided on this one due to the lack of data on PM 2.5. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Councillor France, Gordon France, and then Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've asked this applicant to jump through a number of hoops. I appreciate Councillor Hilton's experience, more experience than myself in this matter, but I think we've asked them to jump through a number of hoops, which they have. I think the committee has been very fair in making absolute sure and getting as much information as we possibly can on this issue. So therefore, I'd like to propose that we go along with the officer's recommendations, just simply because I think they've done more than we asked them. But I do also appreciate Councillor Hilton's concerns, but the Environment Officer doesn't have any concerns and is quite happy. So therefore, I'm happy to propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor France. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. As some might recall, I had serious concerns about this application the last time it came up when it was deferred because of the citing of the monitoring systems. And I fully applaud the applicant for putting a 4-week assessment in right on the base of the site, which is what we wanted, which was what we requested. They'd be fully compliant. I'm Councillor Hilton, I'm not sure I understand all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure I understand, but we are compliant with all the rules and regulations that we asked for. Sorry, the applicant is compliant. So I'm quite prepared to second this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, somebody else put their hand up. Councillor Hilton again.
Yeah, just back to Councillor Dalton there by you, Chair. The applicant has failed to demonstrate the particulate matter 2.5 levels on the site. Thank you.
Okay. Has anybody else wanted to make any comments? If not, I'll move to the vote. No, is that an old hand, Councillor Dalton, or have you put it up again?
Sorry, it's an old hand.
Okay.
I'm meant to be an old hand at this.
I didn't say that.
Obviously.
A historic hand. How's that? Does that sound better?
Historic. That's more better.
Okay, so I'll move to the vote. I'll go through the list, I think, with this one. Councillor Beaver, is he here yet? No. Councillor Boardman, no. Councillor Dalton, for or against the officer recommendation? For. Thank you. Councillor Gordon France?
For.
Councillor G?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Gray?
For.
Councillor Hargreaves?
For.
Councillor Hilton?
Against.
Okay. Councillor Morwood? Councillor Marwood?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. For.
Thank you. Councillor Whittam?
For.
Councillor Whitaker?
For.
Councillor Chris France?
For.
And myself for. So I think I've got 10 for, 1 against. Is that right, Taz?
It is,
Do you want
Chair.
to confirm that for me?
I will, Chair. Thank you. So the planning permission has been granted with conditions for the erection of a children's nursery with associated landscaping and parking at land at Barn, Wallace Way, Bookshop Village. Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3B, Highcop Farm, Denham Lane, Brindle, pages 39 to 68. There's an update on your addendum. The officer's recommendation is planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I've no registered speakers. Ian's going to present this item. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the conversion of existing agricultural buildings to 3 dwellings and 5 light industrial workshop units at Highcop Farm, Denham Lane, Brindle. The application site comprises several low-level agricultural buildings and areas of hard standing at a farm holding in a rural part of the borough that falls within the Greenbelt. The proposed development would involve fairly limited external alterations to the buildings, with only a small lean-to extension proposed to Workshop Unit B, whilst 2 existing structures would be removed. The reuse of buildings is not inappropriate in the Greenbelt, and there will be no greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt over and above that of the existing development on the site. Furthermore, the development will be contained within the developed part of the site, and there will be no impact on any of the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt. The buildings are of limited use for modern agricultural operations, being fairly small in scale, whilst their character will be retained through the conversion works. The stone barn is a characterful building that will be converted to dwellings, whilst the more basic timber sheds would become the light industrial units, and the site can be logically divided between the 2 uses. As such, there will be no harmful impacts on the amenity of any existing or future residential occupiers, and the character of the area will not be harmed. LCC Highways have confirmed that they don't have any objections regarding the proposed development, and it is considered that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. There would also be no adverse ecology or drainage impacts. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, members. Any questions? Concerns? Somebody out there, speak to me. Councillor Marwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'll remember to press the buttons this time. I have no problems with this particular application. I'm happy to see the site improved, really, without any significant harm to the Greenbelt. So I'm really happy to support the officer's recommendations. Thank you. Muted, Chair.
Yeah, I've done it again. My turn to do it wrong. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to refer to paragraph 6 in the report, where the parish council asked about trade effluent. I don't know whether there would be any trade effluent, but has the officer any comment to make on that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I mean, that's not. It's not an aspect of the development that would be managed through the planning process. It would be picked up by other legislation. There is a condition on the addendum requiring the drainage to be surface water and foul drainage to be separated, but there is other legislation that would obviously cover pollutants entering the drainage system, and is also the responsibility of United Utilities. So that's not something that's covered by any of the planning conditions or requirements of our policies. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And I just saw that the United Utilities made no comments, but with that said, then I'm quite happy to second the officer's recommendation.
Right, thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. No. As nobody said anything else, if you're in favour of that, please. Anybody against it, please speak now. Oh, that I take that everybody is happy to support the officer recommendation. Taz.
Yes, Chair. That's a unanimous approval of planning permission is granted subject to conditions for the conversion of existing buildings at High Hop Farm, Denham Lane, Chorley, in respect of 3 dwellings and 4 workshops units used class ED.
Thank you. Councillor France, you've still got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'll get it.
It'll confuse me on the next one, you see. Item 3C, Fairport Engineering, Adlington Mill Marketplace, Adlington, pages 69 to 100, with an update on your addendum. Ian's going to present this item, which is recommended. Planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I have 1 registered speaker, the agent Chris Smith. Chris, can you hear and speak?
I can indeed, yes.
Excellent, thank you. Ian, can you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of 4 industrial buildings for occupation within the general industrial, light industrial and industrial storage and distribution use classes, and includes car parking and delivery areas, access and associated works. The application site comprises the long-established industrial complex of Fairport Engineering that was severely damaged by fire in February 2019, and for which planning permission was gained for its replacement in January 2020. The site is located in the settlements area of Adlington, close to amenities and public transport. The proposed development seeks to redevelop the part of the site that was destroyed by fire with 4 modern units that would provide more flexible accommodation than the previous buildings that occupied that part of the site. These would result in less floor space than that which previously occupied that part of the site, but would allow for a more effective layout, whilst the positioning of the buildings would help to screen the outdoor storage areas. It's recommended that a condition over operating hours of the general industrial units is added to any grants of planning permission, which would improve upon the previous situation in relation to noise and disturbance. As such, the proposed development would have no greater impact on the amenity of the nearby residents, whilst the positioning and scale of the units would result in no unacceptable impacts. The appearance of the site would be improved through this redevelopment and the character of the locality maintained. A new access point would be developed with the closure of an existing access near to the properties on Railway View, which would improve upon the current situation in an area that can become congested. LCC Highways consider that the proposal is acceptable from a highway perspective, and it's considered that the proposed development will not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Chris, would you like to speak now, please? Taz, can you set the timer?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. As Mr. Crossland has reminded you, a fire in 2019 destroyed a significant number of buildings within the application site, and this committee subsequently granted permission in January 2020 to rebuild the lost floor space. Since that time, the owners have re-evaluated the merits of simply replacing the floor space on a like-for-like basis and have concluded that there is greater benefit in delivering modern employment accommodation to meet modern business needs. The planning application before you seeks to deliver less but higher quality accommodation. It will be served by more off-street parking and better access arrangements, an improved layout that is designed to protect the amenity of neighbours. Consultees have raised no objections and conditions are proposed to control the nature of the use to ensure that the occupiers of the proposed units will be good neighbours. We trust that committee will welcome the proposed investment and the significant job generating potential it will deliver, which generally represents sustainable economic development. On this basis, we respectfully encourage members to follow the officer recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Any comments, please? Questions? Oh, everybody came at once then. Councillor Morwood, then Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. It's a long-established building. I'm happy to see it coming back into its sort of full capacity, as it were, and happy that historically sort of things like deliveries and so on could happen basically at any time. So some restrictions have been put onto the time, although I do think that maybe deliveries coming in at 11 o'clock at night, up to 11 o'clock at night, maybe still a little bit noisy for neighbours, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt that there will be good neighbours, and the deliveries will be at appropriate times. But other than that, I guess I'm quite happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morwood. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to see a business coming back like a phoenix, especially in this time that we've had over the last 12 months. I have no hesitation in recommending the second recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? If not, I'll move to the vote. I assume everybody's in favour unless they say otherwise. No. Silence from everybody, right? So I assume everybody is happy. Taz, would you like to confirm that for me, please?
Yes, Chair. Well, that's a unanimous approval for planning permission to be granted subject to conditions for the erection of 4 industrial buildings for occupation within use class EG, B2 and or B8, including car parking and delivery areas, etc. at Fairport Engineering, Adlington Mill, Market Street, Adlington. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Taz. Item 3D, Prospect Cottage, Gregson Lane, Brindle, pages 101 to 124. With an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item and the recommendation is planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have 2 registered speakers, the objector Barbara Still and the applicant Natalie Roberts Steele. Barbara, Natalie, can you see and hear? You're muted, Barbara. It's all right.
Yes, you
we
can.
all do it, even me.
Yeah. I didn't press hard enough.
Okay, Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for a 2-storey extension to the rear of Prospect Cottage, which is located on Gregson Lane. The proposed extension would project to a maximum of 5 metres and would have chamfered corners. A balcony 4.5 metres in width would be located beyond the proposed extension, and this would project a further 1.3 metres. Representations from the occupiers of the neighbouring property have been received, predominantly raising issues relating to the scale of the proposal, the loss of light due to a side-facing kitchen window at 2 Oakbank, and loss of privacy as a result of the proposed balcony. A letter of support has also been received from the adjacent church. The proposed extension would project beyond the rear extension at the neighbouring property. However, it would not project beyond a 45-degree line from the nearest point of the rear-facing window. The kitchen does benefit, this kitchen extension next door does benefit from 3 windows, including the window along the common boundary. And I would refer members to the photographs that are actually on the presentation, which show the facing kitchen window that's in close quarters to the common boundary within the kitchen extension next door. A first floor bathroom window located on the chamfered corner of the proposed extension would be obscurely glazed. The balcony would be set in approximately 3.5 metres from the common boundary with 2 Oakbank, and a privacy screen has been added to the side elevation of the balcony closest to this property during the course of the application. A condition can be used to maintain this in perpetuity. As such, it is considered that the proposed extension would not result in a loss of privacy to neighbouring properties. The proposed extension would be located to the rear of the property and as such would not impact on the street scene and would be screened by the neighbouring church building, and parking would remain as existing. The proposal is considered to represent an acceptable form of development and it is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Barbara, would you like to speak now? Taz, can you start the timer, please?
Good evening. I live at 2 Oakbank, which is described in point 3 as having an extension. This was built in 1999, is only half width, measuring 5 foot by 8 foot, hardly a precedent for the planned extension next door. None of the adjacent properties have extensions. If built to the amended plans, their double-storey rear wall, discounting balcony, will extend beyond my rear kitchen wall, a fact not mentioned anywhere. It will be a mere 2.1 metres, 7 feet from my side wall. This proximity to my wall and thus the window in it would make it totally overbearing and cause a reduction in daylight, regardless of the chamfering, which only starts halfway along the window, which is most used being above the only preparation surface in the kitchen. This overbearing nature of the double-storey wall and its overshadowing would have an impact on my daily life. In point 18, a 2-metre fence is mentioned. I assert that it certainly would not have a greater impact on that window. If a single story, yes, but in this case, absolutely not, given the height of the double-storey wall it will face. The impact will be immense and not acceptable despite what the report states. The 45-degree rule has still not been satisfied, as the line drawn at 45 degrees from my upstairs bedroom window, which incidentally is a window, not doors, standing 2 feet above my bedroom floor and only to be used as an emergency escape. The line is taken from the centre of the window, not the near side, as it should be, as stated in your policy statement, number 14 in the report. Had it been taken from the correct position, the chamfered side in the amended plans would still fail to adhere to this rule. The addition of the balcony, 1.3 metres in length, on the plan submitted on February the 1st, doubles the length of the original cottage, making a huge dwelling, projecting almost halfway down the garden, which slopes as do the gardens of the rest of Oak Bank. As James Walsh from number 3 says in his neighbour response, the balcony will sit at an elevation of 3.5 to 4 metres above the main patio area of my garden. Even with an obscure side panel, the lower half of my garden, that of James and 4 and 5, will be visible from the balcony, causing an unacceptable intrusion into the privacy of our gardens. Finally, the size of the planned extension is totally out of proportion with the rest of the adjacent cottages of Oak Bank, lacking the same character and scale within its setting. It is, after all, actually one Oak Bank, and despite being detached from us, is part of us. Should the plans be passed as they now stand, the site will be overdeveloped, and I assert that our quality of life will be detrimentally affected. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, would you like to speak now? Taz, can you start the timer, please?
Thank you, Chair and members, for the opportunity to speak this evening. Myself and my husband are the applicants for this application. We've purchased Prospect Cottage in early January with a view to refurbishing and improving the property. Shortly afterwards, we shared some draft plans of the proposal with our neighbours as a gesture of goodwill, to give them an idea of the extension that we were proposing. Throughout this process, we have worked proactively with the planning officer to overcome any issues and have amended our plans to take on board any concerns that were raised. The scheme now before members is considered acceptable, not only by ourselves, but also by your planning officers, who have visited the site and assessed the proposals in detail, again, the development plan and all the relevant materials considerations. They have concluded that this application is acceptable and should be approved. As set out in the committee report, the side kitchen window on the neighbouring house, which is 2 Oak Bank, currently looks directly into our rear garden. This is a secondary window, and the kitchen is afforded light from the main rear window and the opposite side window. As the planning officer has rightly identified, we could lawfully erect a fence or an outbuilding under permitted development rights, which could have the same effect to this window as the proposed extension. Notwithstanding this, and set out carefully in the committee report, the relationship between the extension and this window is acceptable, and there would be no unacceptable loss of amenity for the neighbouring property in this regard. We note the comments with regards to the 45-degree angle rule made by our neighbours. This rule applies to rear-facing windows as set out in the Council's householder design guidance, not side windows, as it's been suggested in objections submitted to the council. This issue has been fully assessed by the planning officer, who has concluded that although there are no policies protection for the first floor windows, when applying the guidance relating to the ground floor windows, a projection of 3 metres beyond the 45-degree angle would be allowed. Here, the projection at first floor is actually just 0.3 of a metre, and therefore it's acceptable. We've amended our plans to include privacy screening on the proposed rear facing balcony, which will ensure the privacy of our neighbouring property and its garden is maintained. The balcony is positioned sufficiently away from our boundaries to ensure that there would be no adverse impact on.
Can you rewind up now, please?
This has been assessed in detail and is clearly set out in the committee report. The extension overall is set in from the existing side elevations of the house. This, together with the chamfered sections, ensures that the extension.
You've had more than your 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for your time, and I urge for this approval to be taken.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Dalton, Councillor Hargreaves, Councillor Whitaker. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you. I'm not familiar with this location, and I am concerned by the objector, Barbara, over the loss of amenity, light, etc., etc. I don't know whether other committee members are familiar with the site, but as a committee member, I would like to suggest a site visit. Then we can view this in full.
Okay, thanks.
That's my. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Hargreaves.
Well, I absolutely agree. Exactly what I was going to say. I find it very difficult to believe that the scale of this extension will not limit light and will not affect the building. And I'm very, very concerned about the balconies and the loss of privacy to the neighbouring property. So I agree, we should have a site visit.
Okay. Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks, Chair. People have spoken what I was going to say. I was speaking on me as a rural champion, and listening to the comments that are made from the officers and from the objector. I'm very much concerned about, we have to be very careful in areas like this, the sensitive areas. I'm not sure, I've never come across a letter of support from a local church before, but I'm more concerned about the impact on the residents than I am about that. I mean, paragraph 25 on the report, and you always tell us to refer to that, Chair, talks about on balance, and I'm very much concerned about this, and it's been proposed and seconded that we have a site visit. I would like to certainly endorse that as rural champion, and then we can come back. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Whitaker. I've no objection. I think a site visit in this instance would be a very, very good idea. And does anybody else wish to speak, or I'll move to the proposal that we've got? So I've got a proposer and a seconder that we actually go and look at the site. We have a site visit. Is everybody in agreement with that? If anybody would like to say otherwise, speak now. Silence reigned. Councillor Whitaker, you've still got your hand up. So I take it everybody's happy to go on a site visit. Taz, do you want to officially do that for me, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. So the application Inspector Prospect Cottage, Gregson Lane, Brindle, has been deferred until the next committee to allow the members to visit the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, item 3E, 154 Eves Lane, Chorley, pages 125 to 146, with an update on your addendum. The officer recommendation stays the same, that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a section 106 agreement to secure financial contribution towards improvements to children's play areas. There's an update on your addendum. Registered speakers, I've got an objector, Darren Gregory, and the agent, Lindsay Oram. Darren, Lindsay, can you speak and hear?
I can indeed.
Thank you.
Yes, I can too.
Good, excellent. Adele, do you want to present the report?
Yes,
please?
thank you.
I will do. Thank you, Chair. This application is made in outline for a 2-storey building for up to 4 apartments. Only matters of scale and access have been specified, and members will note that it is the intention to block up the existing access in its entirety. All of the matters are reserved for later consideration. However, indicative drawings have been provided to demonstrate one way in which the site could be developed. Members are asked to note that these plans are purely illustrative and are not for assessment at this point in time. Within the settlement areas, there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and the framework is clear that local planning authorities should support the development of windfall sites through their policies and decisions, giving great weight to the benefits of using suitable sites within existing settlements for homes. The proposed development would have no parking provision, and this was encouraged by LCC Highways as the site is within a sustainable location, and highway officers have not raised any concerns in relation to the impacts of the proposal on parking capacity in the area. In terms of any impacts on neighbouring amenity, this would be dealt with at reserved matters stage, where the proposed development would need to ensure that neighbouring residential properties are not adversely affected. Detailed design would also be reserved for later consideration. A Section 106 agreement would be required to secure a financial contribution towards improvements to the identified play areas. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Darren, would you like to speak now? And Taz, can you start the timer, please?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am an immediate neighbour to the proposed planning application, and I have reviewed the revised site plans. I also acknowledge that this application is in outline, but I would like it noted that I still object to the proposal as I will lose privacy due to the location and proximity of the bedroom windows that overlook my property, and will be able to look directly into my home and my rear garden in its entirety. I also have to question the distance from the rear windows to the proposed application, which will be less than 22 metres, which is the minimum distance to maintain a reasonable amount of privacy. Taking angles into consideration as well, it will still be less than 16 metres window to window. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, would you like to make your representations now, please? Taz, do you want to do the timer?
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I think I'm just going to home in on the point that the neighbour just made, that in terms of an assumption that windows at the rear would overlook his property, his garden, look directly into windows. We've actually played about with a couple of layouts, and the favoured layout and the latest one that we submitted to planning was to increase the width of the building and keep the depth quite shallow, which will enable us to get most of the habitable rooms facing the main road, actually, on Eves Lane. So the living accommodation bedrooms will actually face the front. At the rear, we could just design bathrooms with obscure glass, and the kitchens could be part of the living area without windows. So actually there wouldn't be any overlooking from any rooms at the rear into garden spaces or into neighbouring windows. So we can design that out. It is only an indicative layout at the moment, but we've analysed the footprints, the accommodation, and we're certain that we could provide accommodation that doesn't have any windows that will overlook any properties at the rear. So they will all be facing the main road at the front. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, members. Any questions, any concerns? Councillor Gordon France.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Page 63, paragraph 23. I noticed Lancashire County Council Highways suggest a covered bike store be conditioned. I couldn't just see anything. I went through the report, just couldn't see anything conditioning the bike store. but obviously I think because there's no parking, that is an important point.
Yes, if
Okay.
I can respond to that, Chair, through
Yeah.
you. Yeah, Councillor France, can I direct you to the addendum where all the conditions are set out for this application, and condition number 9 actually requires the bike store. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. Just wanted to clear that one up.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Somebody like to give me a proposition? Oh,
Chair, I'm
Councillor
happy to move
Marwood.
the recommend.
Happy to
Marwood,
second the
Councillor G.
recommendation.
All right, hang on. Councillor Marwood.
Sorry.
Councillor G. Councillor
It's all,
Dalton.
I'm happy to defer. I mean, but I will just say I think the applicant made it pretty clear that they are well aware of the of what might or might not happen, and so it's a sustainable position. It's only outlined, and if it was to come back and all the living and we're all at the back, then we would look at it then. But at the moment, yes, I think it's already been proposed and seconded, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think it has, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Councillor G.
Yeah.
Oh, walk you up
I
then.
no, I
No.
removed my hand.
oh, sorry. Councillor Dalton.
Yeah, I seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I've got a proposal and a seconder out of that anyway. Anyone else wish to say anything? If not, I'll move to the vote. I have a proposer and a seconder to accept the officer recommendation for planning permission, subject to the conditions as mentioned. Is anybody against that? Now is the time to speak. Deathly hush. Okay, so that is accepted. Taz, do you want to confirm that for me, please?
Yes, I can, Chair. Outline planning permission has been granted for the erection of 4 apartments at 154 Eve Lane, Chorley, subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement to secure a financial contribution towards improvement to children's play area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 3F, land to the east and west of Cloverfield, Claytonley Woods, pages 147 to 166, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item, which is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to conditions. And I have one registered speaker, the objector, Jack Watson. Jack, can you hear and speak? Mr. Watson? You're muted.
Hello?
Hello. There you are. Yes, you can.
Well,
you were muted. Okay. Adele's going to present the report and then I'll invite you to speak. Okay. Adele.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members will note that this application has been submitted by Chorley Council and it is proposed to create a natural flood management system adjacent to Carbrook within Carbrook Linear Park. A basin would be created which would fill with water during high flow and storm events, thereby holding back some water capacity to prevent flooding further downstream. The principle of the development is an acceptable one, with Core Strategy Policy 29 encouraging the use of green infrastructure to contribute towards flood relief. In terms of ecology, the main impacts would be during construction. However, these can be satisfactorily mitigated through the use of appropriate conditions. Post-development, the proposal would result in an overall ecological enhancement of the site. Temporary access would be obtained from Clover Field, opposite number 62. Given the nature of vehicles and machinery, LCC Highways have confirmed that they would not require a drop crossing to be put in place. They also comment that parking on street is of a highway concern, as it would involve vehicles being parked for long periods. However, they acknowledge that there are no on-street waiting restrictions here, and it is a short duration of works that is proposed. LCC Highways also advised that if work-related vehicles are parked considerably away from residential driveways, there should be minimal adverse impacts on highway safety and residential amenity. LCC Highways raised no objection to the application on highway safety grounds. Members will note that the officer report considers that further information is required in relation to the proposed location of the spoil deposits, particularly where they are located to the rear of residential gardens, and an appropriate condition is recommended. Subject to these suggested conditions, as set out in the officer report, it is considered that the proposed development is acceptable and would not give rise to adverse impacts on any ecological interest, neighbour amenity, highway safety or flood risk. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Jack, over to you now. Taz, can you start the timer? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
In the layout, it's discussed that there's a footpath, and we spoke with Lindsay Blackstead about this, and the footpath wasn't going to be put behind the house, behind our house and the neighbours. The concern with the footpath was the privacy level of our gardens being decreased. Also, the layout of where the spoils are being deposited, we have concerns about the higher ground level, lowering the privacy of our property, and the natural drainage of the water in our back gardens. We was also told about that we would have somebody come down and explain all of the plans, and this never happened. And also, the layout of the spoils meanders around trees, and the possibility of stagnant water in between the spoils. That's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Adele, do you want to comment on anything? Or?
Only to say, Chair, in terms of the impact on the spoils, officers were concerned about that and the lack of detail in particular, and we've recommended an appropriate condition so that can be agreed in due course. And also we've suggested conditions about the condition of the access. Given that the council is promoting this scheme, then I am confident that those who are responsible for the project will engage with the local community.
Yeah.
And there are no technical reasons really to conclude that there would be any harm. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an application I have absolutely no issue with, so I'm quite happy to propose officer recommendations. I'm quite happy with the conditions put in place.
Okay, thank you. Would somebody like to second that? Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will second it, and the objector was talking about expecting to get officers perhaps down to explain in more detail. That's unfortunate if that never happened, but I suspect that was due simply because COVID came along and the fact that it would be very difficult to face to face to do that explanation. So I'm sure that was pretty much the reason. I like the word natural flood basin, and the water, if I read the report correctly, will soak away very quickly. So hopefully there shouldn't be too much stagnant water lying around for too long. So yes, I'm happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to say anything? If not, I'll move to the vote. So I've got a proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation for permission. If you're not in agreement with that, speak now. With that, everybody seems to be in agreement. Taz, do you want to confirm,
yes, Chair,
please?
Yes, I will, Chair. Thank you. So that's a unanimous decision to grant planning permission, subject to conditions, for the creation of a natural flood management feature on open space off Cloverfield in Parbrook Linear Park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's the end of those. Item 4, confirmation Charlieborough Council TPO in Eccleston, pages 167 to 174. Adele.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members will recall that planning permission was refused at committee earlier this month for residential development on this site, and as part of the assessment of that proposal we identified that there were 3 trees that were worthy of formal protection. We have served the provisional order, and this report is to confirm the order with a modification. I think somehow an incorrect species was detailed on the provisional order, so this is to confirm that order for the 3 trees. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can somebody move that for me, please?
Move that, Chair. Whittaker.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. A
Second it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dalton.
Dalton.
Is everybody in agreement
Thank
with
you.
that? The silence tells me you all are. So that is. Taz, do you want to confirm that outcome?
Yes, I can, Chair. So that's unanimous in respect of TPO number 1 in 2020, confirmed with the modifications outlined in the report.
Okay. Moving on, item 5, the appeals report, pages 175 to 176. Report. We note this report, Adele.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members will note that we've received one appeal that has been lodged relating to Willbrook on Bluestone Lane, which involved 4 houses, and that's only very recently been submitted. And then we have 3 decisions for development that have all been dismissed. There's one appeal that was withdrawn before it was validated. This related to an application for permission in principle on an area of safeguarded land. I'm mindful that it is the last committee of the municipal year, and we did get a decision that came in shortly after I had finalised this report. I just want to update members that the application that related to the dog exercising area up at Heath Charnock, the appeal was dismissed. That will be reported at the next committee, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to make members aware that that appeal has been dismissed.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Adele. Right, item 5, any urgent business. Just one thing, as you know, as has been said, it is our very last meeting of the municipal year, but it's also the final meeting of Chorley Borough Council in its present form with the all-out elections. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all the members for their hard work and support over the past year, which has been very unusual. And thank you all for adapting so well to virtual and hybrid meetings, because it's not been an easy thing to do. It's been a lot to grasp, but I mean, we're very efficient now, as you can see. Best wishes to all those people who won't be seeking re-elections, and a special thanks to Chris France, who's helped and supported me in his position as Vice Chair. I know how difficult it is juggling the primary teaching career and working for the council. So good luck for the future, Chris. You'll be missed, and I'm sure you'll be back. I can't say see you all next year, as who knows who'll be here, who won't be. But I wish you all well, and thank you for all your hard work over the year.
Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, and that's it.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Chair.
Working with you, whether
all the best.
Thank